Welcome to the Agile Strategy Meetup group. My name is Morten Elvang. This afternoon, at least Central European time, is all about Obeya rooms, and I'm really pleased, Tim, that you are able to join us and talk about that from your perspective. And we will follow the same pattern we have been using now for a while. So 30 minutes presentation for you, 30 minutes for questions and answers. Then we will make an effort to end at the whole hour. Anything you want us to know before we get going?
I like interactive presentations, so I will be sharing a presentation at the first half. If you have questions in between as I'm presenting, feel free to ask them, so we can get down to the relevancy for you as well. And I'm also looking forward to your questions in the second half, Morten. So yeah, that's it.
Very well. Over to you then.
Cool, thanks. I'll start by introducing myself a little bit. My name is Tim Wiegel. I have a background in Agile and in Lean, but I've had many different roles in organizations, from the improvement side, but also from the management side, doing projects, programs, portfolio management, lots and lots of things at a lot of different types of companies. But I always saw like a common problem that fascinated me, and it was about how to implement strategy in an effective way, how to make it happen, how to execute it. And 2014, I came across something called Obeya. I'll explain what it is in my presentation. And that led me to writing this book, Leading with Obeya, which is basically a method to bring strategy to life, like not to create a plan, put it in a drawer, but to actually bring it to life with the boards that you see behind me. So during this half an hour, I'll take you through what is this all about, what problems does it address, and how can you use it potentially also for your organization or the environment where you work. So that's just to start and kick off with. So it's called Leading with Obeya, and it's about doing strategy execution together. And every word of that, those three words on the bottom, they all matter. Before we go in that, Morten asked me a few questions, and during the presentation, I'll actually answer them. So the first question was, what is your view on strategy and its role and importance in an organization? Having done years and years on end working with leadership teams and their strategies, my conclusion is a lot of strategy is actually quite vague, and it remains vague. And as long as it stays vague, it's very hard to work with. So that's a problem. But the second thing is also, it doesn't really translate easily into execution, let alone aligned execution. So somebody up there at the boardroom figures out a strategy, lots of teams adopt it. Oh yeah, that's a strategy. Oh, there's so many KPIs, so many targets, so many things, and we don't really set priorities. So I'll just make a decision here. I think he means that, so we'll do this. And in reality, I find that this is actually how it works. Teams try to make the best of their own understanding of the strategy, but that doesn't mean it's understood well. It doesn't mean that it's aligned. And it also means that because there are so many assumptions and misinterpretations of strategy, it means that's actually a really big problem, because it really hinders the organization to get done what they believe in, to deliver on their purpose. So it's of super importance that organizations understand their strategy, understand where they're going, and are able to actually trickle that understanding down through the organization, up and down and back again, to make sure the whole organization works towards the goal. And that's basically what I focus on in my work, week in, week out. Leadership is the ability to transform vision into reality. I really like this quote. Why? Because it shows that leadership is more than just having a vision. Actually, I find the really hard part is not in the vision. The really hard part is bringing that vision into the reality of our daily lives, of our daily work. A lot of people don't see the reality of the vision. They just see the reality of the fires that come into their mailbox and they have to solve every day. So they're not even in their minds working on that strategy. That's something I want to change. And I changed by talking about and working with the leadership system. And what do I mean with that? It's really basically, if you take a leadership team, can be anywhere in the organization, a leadership team, they all have to do a basic set of things. They have to set a strategic goal, understand where they want to go. They have to enable the right capabilities to be able to achieve that goal. They need to be able to solve the problems on the path of achieving that goal. And they need to plan and align their scarce resources. And then once the plan's there and everything is set in motion, be able to support the successful execution of that plan. So this is what I call the leadership system. And there's a triangle here. This goes for one team. But if you look at an organization, there are many triangles, many teams that need these core ingredients in their team in order to be successful in executing strategy. And if you then take a step back and you look at the organization, roughly you can say there are two systems in that organization. There's a management system, a leadership system, and that's the reversed pyramid that I've drawn here. The idea of that is that it sets a direction and also supports the teams that are actually delivering projects, services, or products to customers, the people that actually do value-added work, to support them in doing their work effectively. And when I was at the start of my career, I thought this is how organizations work. I was working in projects and I saw one department doing that and the other project doing this. And then we were going the other way. But I thought surely there's somebody up there who oversees it all, who makes very sound decisions based on the right information and with the right context. But as I progressed in my career, I found that maybe I was a little bit naive at the start of my career. So I started asking, and this is a survey that I did in 2023, I think. I started asking people, do you feel that your leadership teams are actually effective? And this is basically what came out. There's room for improvement, let me put it that way. Some teams are actually quite fond of the effectiveness of the leadership teams above them. But the majority hinges to the left, where there's definitely room for improvement. Now, there were around 200 people in this survey. And the funny thing was, actually, there were also leaders in that survey. So I decided, why not look at the outcome of the leaders and ask them, do you think your own leadership team is effective? Many people tend to think that everybody's complaining about their managers not doing a good job. A lot of people here think that the outcome of this curve is different for leadership teams. So let's have a look. It's actually almost exactly the same. For the leaders who entered in this survey, when they looked at their own leadership teams, they felt there's room for improvement. We have a problem. There's something to gain here. And this is what I focus on with organizations. This is, I think, the key indicator that I'm trying to leverage. It's management gives direction to strategic goals and helps to achieve them. In that survey, I asked, do you feel that this is true for your organization? And the majority of people indicated this is not really how we experience it. So there is a need, because if this is not what you are doing in the reversed pyramid, then your reverse pyramid is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So in effect, that pyramid doesn't look like this, but it looks more like this. Lots of leadership teams and leaders that individually interpret priorities and goals, individually give a direction. And as a consequence, if you are not aligned on the leadership levels, your shop floor teams, you can put them to agile training and doing agile improvements on the shop floor all you want. But if you don't fix the leadership system, it's going to be a mess anyway, because you don't have the right priorities. There's no clarity on where everybody's supposed to go. There's no alignment on the strategic level. And that's what you need for the organization as a whole to be effective. So I've asked management teams in the years that I've been doing this, what are then actually the problems that you're running into? Why is that pyramid not working for you? What are you doing within your team that's hindering you from, what are you experiencing in your team that's hindering you from doing this properly? And they all came up with the similar list of things. Number one, fighting fires beats long-term strategy. There's no time in our heads or in our daily schedules to work on strategy. There's a lack of overview, no focus. It's difficult to set real priorities. It's working in silos, like we're a team, but everybody's doing their own thing, and we're not really doing it together. And there are too many meetings that are unproductive. So we have our management team meeting once every week, 4 hours on the Thursday. Everybody comes out tired. We didn't really come up with meaningful decisions or actions. What's the use of this meeting? Do you recognize that? I actually don't see people, so I'm asking it to a screen, but if you recognize it, feel free to respond. And otherwise, I'll just go to the next slide. Coming down to the conclusion of this part is I haven't seen managers myself that I thought were lazy. Most of the people in that leadership system or in that management system are working very hard, 50, 60 hours at least, trying their utmost to get things done. But they're working hard, but they're not working effectively. And that's really because the system in which they're working is not functioning properly, or maybe even non-existent, if you like. So a bad system will beat a good person every time. One of my favorite quotes from Deming. And this brings me to the next question from Morten. Are there any trends or developments? Yes, definitely. If you're looking for a better leadership system, then Obeya is definitely one that will help you move forward in this area. So what does Obeya mean? And where does it come from? Obeya means literally big room in Japanese. It's usually spelled with one O, but if you translate it literally, it's spelled with two, but many people don't pronounce the second O. That's why they lose it. But the important thing here is it comes from Toyota. It's a big room, it's very visual. And for example, they used it also when they were building the Prius. The Prius is well, you might recognize it as a program, right? Mid-90s, they decided we're going to build the car for the next century. So it needs to be twice as fuel efficient, it needs to be affordable, it needs to be attractive for the large audience. Oh yeah, we don't have so much time. So somehow we need to develop it in half the time that we built, that's used for building comparable cars. Isn't that just like your normal project, right? Time, scope, quality, cost. Impossible. How do you do that? Well, we don't just have to reinvent the way we build the car itself, but we also have to reinvent the way we build the car. Otherwise, we are only going to get a small improvement on everything. So they figured, if we can bring everybody that matters to build that car into a room, rather than us going to different, sites, different departments, and solving all the problems in the department, we bring everybody here. And we focus on the value that we're trying to create. So everything that matters for building that Prius, we put it on the walls. We have a multidisciplinary team that comes in here and that starts working on this Prius and solving problems on this Prius in the most tangible way, with prototyping in that room, everybody around the value that they're trying to create. And that worked really well in the sense that the Prius is the most successful hybrid car in the world, still is. Not saying it's the most beautiful one, but they did something very special there. And for example, in the Netherlands nowadays, a lot of teams are adopting Obeya also to work with their own teams. But the challenge there is, like many things that we try to adopt from Toyota, is don't underestimate what Toyota is good at. So this is to the left of me here, you see a picture. It's not an Instagram picture, it's a black and white picture of them using a Kanban board in their factory. They have been doing this for a long time. They have really good experience with continuous improvement and with visual management. So they're really good at that. And that's also the reason why Obeya works well, because they're already good at it. But when you adopt Obeya, you think, oh, cool, we're also going to put some stuff on the wall, and now suddenly everything will be a great success, and we'll build Prius cars also. That's not going to be the case. Then you're really underestimating where it comes from. So you need to keep that in mind when you start with Obeya. Before we move on, so there are 3 things that would define an Obeya. There's a committed team with one goal. There should be use of visual management in that big room to support the achievement of that goal. And there is continuous improvement and structured problem solving being done in that room by the team. And then if you look at what does an Obeya look like, well, it really depends on what your goal is. the Obeya will adapt both in visuals as well as how it's being used, whether you are building a car, whether you are organizing an event, or whether you are using it to lead strategy to execution. And that's really the form of Obeya that I've been working on and have described and developed with my book. And this is basically what I'm going to be showing you. So on the top, you see 5 boards. I'll show, and they're also behind me, so I'll take you through. And these boards basically visualize the 5 key leadership tasks. So that means that if the team walks into the room, everything they need to know and see, it's actually on the wall for them to do their jobs effectively as a leadership team. On the bottom, you see the 7 principles for thinking and acting. And these are actually the things that you need to understand if you take something from Toyota, you want to implement it in an organization that is not Toyota. And these things need to be taken into account in order to be successful. So we don't have a lot of time, but I will take you briefly through the boards behind me. Let's see. Here we go. And we start at the top left. And this is the strategic direction. Obviously, this is what you need to agree on as a team first, because this sets out the direction and also it forms the basis for everything else on this Obeya. So what do we see on the top left here? It's the purpose of the team. And you could say this is the mission or the vision or whatever way you structure or identify the common goal of the team that is going to be working in this room. So that's on the top left. Secondly, behind it are the strategic capabilities. So these are the things that you need or need to be good at in order to be able to succeed in that higher goal. And for example, they can consist of things like customer satisfaction. They can consist of employee satisfaction, craftsmanship, finance, quality of products, speed of delivery, safety, compliance, sustainability. All of these things may be strategic capabilities for your team or organization. And having done this a lot of times with a lot of management teams in different types of organizations, from big corporates to startups, these are actually quite common topics for many of those leadership teams, only they come back in the different words that are unique for that particular team or organization. So these are the strategic capabilities, but then coming from left to right, if these things are something that we need to be good at or that we need, then and they need to go well, then the question is, how well is it going? And that's what we have the performance board for. So on the performance board are indicators that are actually telling us, this is important to us, great. How well is it going? If it's going well enough, the indicator will be green. If it's going not so well, and there's problems that we need to start solving, the indicator is turning red. That also defines in this particular session what is the stuff that we are going to be talking about. So it actually dictates the agenda for the leadership team. And at a glance, they immediately can see where the different systematic aspects of the organization, where things are going well, where things are going not so well. Then we have the tough problems board. So for example, we try to fix problems with a few items, few action items, maybe a small project. But in the performance area, we see month after month, we don't see the desired performance. So for some reason, we're not understanding the problem well enough. And this is where you really need to start doing structured problem solving. And that's what the tough problems board is for. This is, for example, I would recommend to use something like Toyota Kata. But you can use A3 problem solving. You can start organizing Kaizen events and stuff like that. As long as you do it in a structured way. If you do understand what you need to do, okay, we can just do this project. We do an upgrade on the website. We expect so much more conversion. We build a new bike. We open a new factory to increase our delivery capability. These are all the things that are milestones on our plan to value board. So milestones indicate a moment in time in which something of value is being delivered. And we have to be careful in planning this value because we have limited time and resources to actually do that. So it's actually sort of a portfolio consideration here as well. So this is basically then, if you look at the plan to value board, you take a step back with the team, this is basically what everybody is going to do to make sure that we are improving the performance indicators here so that we are actually meeting the things that we need to be successful and in the end achieve our purpose. Looking at all of this, this is now basically your strategic plan come to life. But my favorite Mike Tyson quote, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So what do you do when the reality tomorrow is already different? That's what we have the act and respond board for. And that's behind me. So the act and respond board is basically an ad hoc meeting where the meeting is not ad hoc. The meeting is 3 times a week, half an hour. But the management team convenes here. So it's the same team that sits in the rest of the Obeya as well. They convene here to basically be available to address problems or requests that come from anywhere in the organization. So we planned to open the new factory, but suddenly the local government is not giving us our permit. What are we going to do? How are we going to deal with it? The project team can't move forward and they need management attention to make sure that things keep running smoothly. That's something that could be addressed as a problem in the inbox here. Then the team stands there. They now are all aware of the problem. They look at it from different angles and different, because they're multidisciplinary. And then they decide, okay, who's going to pick up the problem, and they will take it further. So that's what the act and respond board is all about. Are there any questions so far about how this Obeya works? I see one question coming up about the digital board. Yes, there are also digital boards. We are in a Miroverse. You can look up these templates for Mural. We have these templates, and they all look exactly the same as the ones that I have behind me, the physical boards. They're also there for concept boards, which is big in Germany as well, and Obeya. So these are 4 tools that we have digital templates in, and we also work with hybrid boards. So this is basically explaining the top part of the model and what it looks like. So effectively, if you have a room, a physical room, if you can, because not all teams can, I understand that. But if you can be there with your team, you have the Obeya sessions standing. People take ownership of stuff that's on the boards. They are engaging. You are in the room. The whole strategic plan is around you. Things really come to life. I think that's very important also to mention that Obeya, funny enough, is actually not about what's on the walls. The Obeya is actually about the team in the room. The Obeya doesn't do anything. It's just paper on walls. It's useless unless you start using it as a team in the right way, and then it can really bring you a lot of value. And doing that effectively is with using it standing. Every board has its own routine and rhythm. Going from high-level strategy, which you don't talk about every week, to 3 times a week, half an hour, for example, in the act and respond board, which is a very specific, very concrete meeting. I will send you also the slides and also give you some more details with the explainer guide on what the sessions are about, what their meeting frequency is, etc. So for time considerations, what advice do you have, was a question from Morten, for people on how to best engage in the topic of strategy in their organization. Well, what I have found, mentioning at the start, is a lot of strategy is not effective because everybody's just doing it in their own way within the organization. What I think organizations are really benefiting from would be a consistent and adaptable leadership system that enables strategy execution. So actually thinking about strategy is not just something that we do because you're a manager, oh, here are the targets, start running. No, we start building and working in a systematic way to bring strategy to execution and bring it to life for the teams so they can actually adopt it in their management routines. So again, it means not just talking about a plan or a shape or here's a target, but really, how do we actually manage this organization together? Not just this team, but all of the teams. And I think that's a very powerful thing that you can do with this method, because the boards I'm showing you behind me, the meeting rhythms, the routines, the templates, and how all of this is set up, it actually gives you a pattern. a pattern that you can use not just for one team, but you can also use it for the other team, and then for the other team. And you can use it in boardroom level, but you can also use it for operational management. And the cool thing is the boards all look the same. So if you work on the work floor and you want to understand the strategy of your organization, you can walk to the different Obeyas. You see the same room, only the information on the room is logical and relevant and at the right abstraction level for that particular level of the organization. So on boardroom level, you would have a lot more overview, whereas on operational management level, the CEO can actually go to that particular department and see how they interpret the strategy and how it links back to what's being decided in the boardroom. I think I saw some questions passing by, but I couldn't actually read them. Morten, can you maybe help if there's a relevant question, or that we move for the next 4 minutes to the last part of the presentation?
Yes, of course. So Tom had one question, and then Kong had a question. Tom had a question. So Kong had a question: what level of management do you actually get involved, and for them get working with operation and making decision on place? Sorry, I'm not sure I got that right. Kong, maybe you could ask it yourself if you're here.
Yeah. I think I got the basic gist of the.
I think Tim actually responded my question there because
Okay.
yeah, because it will be very difficult for have different kind of levels of management that will have some arguments and so on. And but I think I got the answer there from Tim with the last. Yeah.
I can actually give you a few extra tips. One of the questions we get a lot is, should you start from the top if you're building this leadership system? It has advantages to start from the top, but to be honest, most people in the boardroom are too busy and being lived too much by their stakeholders. So it doesn't work that well with them at the start. A lot of teams that we help start successfully are actually in the middle. So they come to find a solution for their team. Then they adopt this method. They can actually see, hey, it's working for us. Other teams then also start seeing it. Hey, so this is working actually quite well. Yeah, come and have a look. For example, we did this at a big bank in the Netherlands. And when they had their Obeya sessions, they actually had a place where people would be visiting. They had spectators to their management sessions because it was so interesting how they were using this. So if you start with this and you're having trouble convincing people, never push Obeya. Find the people that are interested in solving the issues that I showed you earlier in the slides. Start with them and then show them. Just, oh, this is actually working. I can start seeing it now. Why don't you come over and have a look? And then it makes sense to also take it to other leadership levels in the organization. But never start pushing it. That'll be my advice there. Oh, and there was one other question, right?
No, I think it's empty now.
Okay.
But also,
I have a follow-up question. I'm just wondering here. If you work with Agile and so on, and you will now I'm now okay. If you work with so-called Agile teams, the trend tends to that the team we don't actually have any roles because we work as a team and it's a teamwork. And sometimes when you have a management person on the team, people get a bit restrictive with the thinking and so on. So what is your point of view there?
When I do this with a management team, it's important that we build a room around the team. So that's very important. And then, as you see, there are different parts of the system that the team needs in order to be successful. So one thing can be about product quality. The other thing can be about how do we function as a team, for example, looking at the colleagues, employees, etc. The cool thing I like about this is that I always ask a team, so who wants to be representative of this part of our success? So it's not like I'm the boss, you take this, you do that, you do that. It's about we are a team. We all have a common goal. The boss is actually part of a team. I'll call them the boss on purpose because I always like to be explicit about who is the person that is in the end accountable for everything that happens. But also, when you look at this picture, they are the ones to represent the team on the next level of the organization as well. So for me, it's you can adapt this model to whatever type of work or organization form you have, as long as there is a team. I would recommend that the team owns the board, so it's always up to them how they want to then distribute the ownership on the different parts of the board. And then you set it up so it starts working for them. That will be my recommendation. And then the boss, in between brackets, they have to take that up to the next level in which they will be a part of their team, maybe even in that Obeya. Does that help answer your question?
Yes. Thanks, Tim.
Cool.
Thanks, Tim. You managed to transition us effortlessly into the Q&A part, so let's continue with that.
Okay, good.
Any more questions for anyone, or Tim, was there anything else you wanted to do before we go to that part?
Yeah, just these last few things. Just give me 2 minutes and I'll wrap up.
Absolutely.
So, why I think this is, my takeaway from why this is so effective, first and most of all, is visual. So Obeya is very appealing because it has nice visuals. People are easily impressed, but also it's immediately the pitfall because people think, oh, I'll just take a room, I'll put my reports and my dashboards and my portfolio on the walls, and now I will have the same success as Toyota had. But that obviously doesn't happen. So that's why I developed a method which is fit for purpose for this particular use of Obeya. Again, you can use Obeya for other things. It will look different. You have different types of sessions, different templates, etc. I like it because it's very pragmatic. It really goes back to the core of the 5 leadership tasks. And therefore, it doesn't really matter whether you're using Agile or Lean or waterfall stuff. It goes back to the essence of the leadership system. And therefore, it easily adapts. But it does introduce Lean and Agile thinking. So that's a benefit. And it's also very important to be successful, I think. And finally, again, it's scalable. So it's not like you need to use different types of Obeya for different levels. They all are resting on the same fundament that you can use everywhere in the organization. Yeah, I'll use this at the end of the presentation. I just wanted to introduce some next steps, but maybe we should first dive into the content a little bit more. With the Q&A.
Tom, you had a question. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Or maybe Tim, you can even read it yourself. But I think this one I can read. Can you give more detail or example on how you clarify the objectives, for example, security, is what Tom is asking.
Yeah. So let's see. What I usually do with the team, and I'll take you a little bit more towards the board. What I usually do with a team is after we have defined, okay, this is what we are all about as a team, this is our higher goal. Then the next question is, okay, what are the strategic capabilities for us? So how do you come to this list? I always ask a team, are you concerned with generally the topics that are usually on this board for most management teams? You can find that in the book. There's actually also a demo Obeya. I'll share the link with you later on, in which you can have a look on how this is formulated. But I ask those teams, like for example, are you concerned? Are you concerned with, or is customer satisfaction for you a strategic capability? Do you need it in order to be successful? Maybe once or twice in my career, I've heard a team say, no, that's not so relevant for us. Okay, so customer satisfaction, employees, finance, quality of products, fast, efficient operations, etc. These are all quite common things. And then you mentioned safety and security. That's also a thing. So first, the team determines this topic is important to us. Then the next question is, okay, what is your vision on this? So how is this important to you? Are you a software team that requires very high, because you're working in the banking sector, you have very high standards, security, safety is built into every process, and every engineer is minding the security aspect of their work. These are the qualitative statements to address what you want to achieve what you need to achieve in order to be successful with the higher goal.
Oh, Tim, now we lost your microphone.
Tends to happen when I sit down. Am I back on now?
Yes, every second time it's me who mute people by accident. So
Okay.
happy to not be in the way. Now we can hear you.
Okay, so the indicators then tell you about how successful are you, but it starts by the team defining what is our vision on security and safety in this case. Does that answer the question?
No, actually, I'd be very interested to know how clear the idea is, whether it's because you very nicely pointed out we need greater clarity. I agree. So how great is your clarity? For example, do you quantify and measure how much security people should have?
Yes, so a good point. So how do you make it more clear? I really like that. This is high level. This is vision. This is, this is qualitative text. Then how do you define it? How do you measure it? That's something that happens more at the performance board. What does that actually mean for the actual work that needs to be done next week? That's something that you see at the plan to value board. So we start with a high level vision on security, for example. There are words, themes, etc. in there. And then we go to, okay, but how, for example, what is then the indicator that tells us whether that's actually up to par? So for example, outstanding audit findings are always resolved within less than 4 weeks. This is one indication that for us says, yes, we are meeting all EU standards and ISO certification. And when something does go wrong, we are on top of things to have them resolved. So going from left to right through the boards and taking that theme from left to right over the boards, it makes it more specific and more concrete. Does that help?
Looks like it
Yes.
did. Thomas.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Paul, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, yeah. So I guess I'm obviously short sample size, but a lot of the leadership teams, or even people lower down the organization that prescribe as leaders, tend to really struggle with the concept of strategy, and you end up with lots of fluffy statements full of Sunday words, and just like lack of clarity. And I wondered how you might, or in your experience, how you've closed that gap if you've experienced the same.
I have experienced that same, and exactly that actually. So what I found, for example, was that with teams that had this fluffy strategy, I would, well, maybe define the strategy a little bit like that. Cloudy, fluffy, whatever you like. Can you see this actually?
Yeah, kind of.
Should I use a different marker?
Description's working anyway.
Maybe this is a bit more clear. So what we're doing with the structure that's actually on the left there, by looking at strategy based on those strategic capabilities, is that you actually build a framework, a systematic look at strategy. So, for example, sometimes words in strategy can be consolidation. Consolidation is our thing for our strategy in 2025. Sure, but now consolidation is nice, right? But do you want to consolidate on customers? Do you want to consolidate on finance? Do you want to consolidate on your IT landscape? What is it that you want to consolidate? So by introducing these strategic capabilities in these topics, you actually start shaping a field in which your strategy is then worked out. So consolidation is no longer a strategy. The question is really, how do you make consolidation specific? So as a word, it ends up, for example, with consolidation of I don't know, production lines, so we can simplify. Why are we doing that? Because we want, actually, we want to save costs. Okay, well, let's measure the amount of production lines and their effectivity and their output, and also look at the cost of the production lines, so we can actually see if we lower them, are we still on the right output, but also are we actually saving costs by lowering them? So you make it much more tangible, and it's mostly because of the structure. There's no longer just any kind of structure. There's actually a repetitive structure. And the cool thing is, if other teams also start to adopt these same strategic capabilities on their level of the organization, it doesn't matter anymore where you walk into the room, because they all have the same strategic structure. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Very well. Max, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, there's actually two of us here. I'm Stephanie, but hi.
Okay.
So I've always been quite low down in an organization. I haven't been a leader yet. So I guess, yeah, I'm kind of asking from a different perspective. But what I've always felt is like I've been in teams where even if my bosses have decided to like implement a new system, and I've always been really excited, like this idea of like hanging up little notes on a board makes me really happy. But then my colleagues just haven't cared at all, if I'm being honest. Is there any sort of benefit to this Obeya system that would help people get on board who, like, I guess, are more traditional or just a little bit more resistant to kind of new processes?
Ooh. Well, I can mention a couple of benefits that teams have experienced. We always do whenever I help a team get started with this method, we do after 6 months a survey, like, are you still using it? What benefits are you experiencing, etc. I have, and yeah, that's, I mean, the general benefits are we are much more effective in our meeting time. We do work more long term, etc., etc. But I think your question is more also about when people are reluctant to use sticky notes. Is that right? Or if they're not in that mindset, how do you get them on board for this?
Yeah, or just generally, like I feel like a lot of the times I've been in companies where my bosses have basically just had to give people like, okay, this is your task, just go do this task. And there's no like involvements really.
Yeah.
And then I feel like the thought, like if I was my boss in previous jobs and with the colleagues that I was working with, if I had to introduce to them, come on guys, let's get into a room, let's hang up some sticky notes, let's discuss strategy, people would just be like, no, I can't be bothered. Like, I don't want to, just tell me what to do.
Ah,
I mean,
yeah.
obviously that's a problem with the motivation in the team and so on, I understand, but is there some, like, I don't know if you've ever had any experience with it, or was it just like a shit company to be at? I mean, obviously I left it, so, but in general.
Yeah. No, well, I can reflect on that a bit. I was in the Middle East last year, and there was a team that we wanted to help them get started. People were a bit reluctant. It was very alien to them, all the stuff that we were doing. And at the start, people were like, yeah, I'm not going to write my own sticky notes. I have people for that. And, why stand? I'm comfortable sitting. I don't care about the standing. And I was like, at the day one, we took 3 days. Normally, we take 3 days with the management team. And on day one, I was like, whoa, this is really different from what we are used to in the Netherlands. How is this going to work out? But I think the key aspect is, first of all, a team must really want this. So whenever you start setting this up, I would always ask a team, what are the problems that you want to solve with this? Have them write it down. Have them put that on a paper or flip over somewhere, put that in the room as well. So every time that somebody complains about, I don't want to hang up my sticky notes, you go back to, but guys, this is something what you wanted to resolve as a team, right? That's the second tip. Have them write down the stuff that they want to resolve. But secondly, make sure that they actually are willing and able to operate as a team. And when those two ingredients are there, then suddenly it matters to them to move towards a strategy that gives them meaning. So why do you come out of bed every day? Well, this is why. What do you need to make it fun to come out of bed every day? These are the things you need to start to make working. Cool. Can we see how well it's working or not? And can we identify the problems? And also, everything that's put up here, for example, the milestones, different people from your team are going to be contributing to different things here. But for example, in the process of the meeting, the plan to values meeting, you start checking off things. There are celebrations. People are saying, yeah, cool, you did that. All right. There's a quarterly session, a quarterly strategy session. And then you also have what we call the treasure chest. So things that have really made the difference from our last quarter, the milestones that really made a difference, that really boosted performance, for example, or did something unique and new, you put them in the treasure chest. They get celebrated. And all of these are moments of victory where you release a little bit of endorphin with your team and say, yeah, that worked, cool. And also it has meaning. So it's not just about sticky notes, but we're really working on something that matters in terms of strategy. So invite your boss and the boss's boss and show them what you're doing. And that can create a very nice team environment if the team understands what the problem is that they're trying to solve, and if the team is really a team. So those are two really key ingredients. Does that help?
Yeah, I thought this was a really great answer. I just thought it was also like a really good point that you made, that maybe it's like you have to start really granular and be like, what are the problems that you specifically want? Like maybe one colleague just like can't be bothered to do one particular type of task or something, and you can learn to like actually understand the problems in your team or in the like small group that you're working in. And it may not even be like high level strategy in the sense that high level leadership strategy, but like just strategy for these 5 people who are like kind of unmotivated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't see the meaning of their work, or they don't get the meaning out of it or value out of it, and that's what makes them unmotivated. It really depends on why are they not motivated. But
yeah, very cool. Okay, thank you.
Very well. Then we have Ken, you had a question.
Hi. Yeah, hi. Good question. Yeah, on problem solving, is there any particular techniques or frameworks or anything like that you particularly use when you're getting people to solve their problems?
Yes, I really like to use Toyota Kata. Actually, quite a bit of this is based on the same concept of learning habits and introducing those habits into your work and then using them. And that's what I really like with Toyota Kata as well. Are you familiar with it or not?
No.
Okay, so Toyota Kata, Mike Rodder wrote a book on Toyota Kata. He basically looked at why are we all copying tools from Toyota and calling them lean tools, but they're not working. What's going on with Toyota? And he found that there's 2 very basic patterns that are working there. It's the improvement pattern and the coaching pattern. There's an improver who actually does the work. They fix the process, they turn the buttons, etc. And there's a coach. And the coach is usually a manager. And that's what I like about the leadership part of this, that the coach learns to be a better coach. The improver learns to improve, but also they learn to become a coach because they are being coached by a coach. So whenever there's a problem here in the Obeya, for example, our employee satisfaction has really been too low over the last couple of months. If this is a management team, then the management team decides, okay, we need structured problem solving because we don't understand the problem well enough. What is a way that we can start doing that this afternoon? Simply by assigning a coach and an improver, and they start working on it. So we don't have to launch a project. We don't have to send people to a 5-day training before they can get started. They can get started this afternoon by using a simple template, which is the improvement board here, and 5 simple coaching questions. And then they can get started this afternoon, and the coach, which is a manager in this case, for example, and somebody from his or her team, who's actually the improver doing the work, they have regular sessions. Every couple of days, they have done a new experiment or did a new step. They reflect on it, they learn, they keep their progress on this board, they record it here, and slowly but surely we should be able to see that in this Obeya for this management team, the employee satisfaction is gradually going up because of the small experiments and steps that the improver and coach are doing. So it's actually quite easy, it's very low threshold to get started with, and I really like that because a lot of managers in this room, they're way too busy to learn structured, more complicated structured problem-solving methods. I'm not saying they're bad, I'm not saying don't use them, but for a management audience, people that have very limited time and extra time to learn new things, this is actually quite easy to get started when you're solving your tough problems.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yep, thank you very much.
Cool. Any other questions?
Time will allow for your question too.
Okay. Tell me something about the value created for your strategic capabilities? Do you have any measure like what they expected they got, or they did mixture, or not at all? For example, in your 6-month checkup.
I'm not understanding the question. How do you mean the value you get from the strategic?
Okay, let's say you wanted to increase sales by 25%.
Oh, yeah.
Now, do you have any experience or case or measure that people actually reach their strategic capability goals?
Yeah, so we have the strategic capabilities, which is basically a text, a qualitative text, and a statement and a vision of where you want to go. Then next to here, not everybody uses it, but for example, with our own Obeya, I really like to use it. It's called periodic goals. So we have an annual goal that's in here, and on the other side, there's actually a quarterly goal. And these goals are sometimes met, sometimes we don't meet them. For example, we wanted to set up a certain structure for marketing, and as we were setting it up, we thought that would be a good idea. It turned out to be a good idea, but the idea we had on how to do it at the start of the quarter, as we were going through it, we learned that original design was not working well. So we did a couple of experiments and improvements, and at the end, we did achieve the goal for our quarter in terms of we set up a funnel. It just didn't look like the one we had come up with at the start. Yeah, that's something that you can put up in your periodic goals. But this is periodic. So for example, when you work with OKRs, you have a certain amount of time that you're giving yourself, you're setting an ambition. There are different ways that you can then start influencing the key results. So if I want to get more sales, or if I want to reduce production time, if you know how to achieve that, then this could be in your periodic goals. Actually, I have an OKR template also here. If you know how to achieve more sales or reduce the production times, you can just plan the work. If you know how to do it, well, we can reduce production times by implementing an extra production line, for example. That's this one. You check it off as you go through the quarter. You have your plan to value sessions. You're checking it off, and once it's checked, you should be able to see an increased performance in production times, which then relates to your strategic quarterly goal, which then relates to your production time. So it's hard to, does that help a little bit to sort of get the gist?
Thank you. I got a much better picture.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. There are no more questions. Hugh had a comment for Max and Stephanie. Piece of free consulting. I have a question for you. Because I have to say, I really like the structured approach you do to Obeya. I have been crossing Obeya rooms myself on several occasions, and I really appreciate the structure that you have been building and the guidance. The question I have is a bit more forward-looking. I mean, where do you see the technology of Obeya going? I mean, it's obvious to ask things like generative AI, digitization. Is there going to be like a semantic model behind the screens you have in your background that they can think for themselves while people are busy thinking about the next sticker updates? Or where do you see this thing going in the next few years?
It's a good question. With Obeya, people tend to have technology bias. So sometimes people walk into this room, they say, "Oh, it looks great, but do it all digital." So digital walls, etc. The pitfall there is that the power of Obeya comes from the people. And going through the process of building that Obeya is for a very large part where the power is. So for example, if I can actually touch this paper and I can move it and I can write on it and I can show it to you, and then I put it on the board and I move it, you see my movement, you hear the emotion in my voice when I say, "Sorry guys, it's not going to happen this month, it's going to take 1 month more." That is a very natural, personal, interpersonal process That's very hard to emulate, even when you're working remotely. So my view of the high quality Obeya starts with a physical Obeya, a physical team in the room. If you can, obviously, lots of examples where you can't do that, so then you have to move to the next big thing. But the point here is that if you start incorporating technology, so you don't have the physical paper anymore. These are all screens, but they're not always on. So you walk into the room, you actually have to press a button to turn on all the screens. Immediately, the Obeya is not always there. So it's not always on. You can't always just look at it. The whole process and interaction and quality of that team is being reduced. So the same thing goes for other future technologies. AI, for example. AI can really help. Actually, the place where I find AI really helps is with these qualitative statements. So take your vision, strategy of your company, upload it, and give us a few textual examples of what our strategic texts may look like. And we now even built a workshop where you can use AI in 1.5 hours to build up one of these boards for your own company. So AI is going to be helping. It's going to help you. So what can it sort of look like? But the one thing, for example, with these texts that's so important is that the team in the room all have the same understanding of the same wording. So that means if I use the word consolidation, and then you may also interpret consolidation in a certain way. But what we have to do now is, okay, we put consolidation up here, but what does it mean? And where do we want to apply it to? And if we apply it to production lines, then, what do you mean? Do you want to get rid of all the production lines? Do we want just one? Do we want to go from 20 to 10? That's something that we're specifying here. AI cannot do that for you. You have to go through that process as a human being. So I think I welcome technology advancements. I also see in the future that hopefully we will be doing this stuff with augmented reality. We are doing stuff with 360 cameras. VR so far for me hasn't really worked because you don't really see the people. And again, seeing the people and their movements and their non-verbal communication is so important in working together as a team. So I see a Minority Report, right? That movie with Tom Cruise. You can move the information around, pops up here, pops up there, but you can also still see the other people. That's sort of where I think, oh, okay, cool. It's still a people job, but you see an augmented Obeya around you and everybody's looking at the same thing and can interact with it. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. That's something I would get excited about for the future if you look at Obeya. For now, I'm already quite happy, for example, when we have our sessions here, that the performance board is actually a digital board. Has the same format, so it integrates nicely. I will send a picture to people if they like, or a video. Then you can really see how that then integrates. And of course, having a live dashboard can be very useful in your Obeya rather than printing out information that is once every 2 weeks. And it has a delay on the actuality of it.
Yeah. We are approaching the top of the hour, and you mentioned you had a little bit more information for us that you'd like to share.
Right.
I don't want to spoil your chance to do that.
Yes, so I will share the slides with you guys. If you want to get into this, there's the Leading with Obeya website. There's the book, of course. The book's been translated into 5 languages: German, Italian, Dutch, English, and Chinese. And Polish is hopefully coming up this year. There's lots of free downloads and materials that you can use. If you log into Leading with Obeya, you can get a free account. There's also a virtual demo Obeya of the one that I have behind me, so you can actually look a little bit more into the details. There's a small introduction e-learning as well there. If you want to get trained as a professional, there's a foundation, a facilitator, and a specialist. Foundation helps you use it, facilitate how to facilitate the session, and the specialist is really how to set this up for other teams. So that's something that we're doing, and also we get messages from other training and coaching companies in other countries that are asking us, can we also do that for our local audience in French, for example. So we have started with working with partners that also that are now also picking this up for their local partners, local markets in their own local language. So that's basically it. If you like, I would be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out as well.
Tim, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank
great
you.
evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.